Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 200, The Heartbreak of Brock. That's right, we've done 200 episodes now, guys. Damn. Anyways, the episode begins with Ash and the gang arriving in a small town as nighttime approached, meaning that they had to find a place to sleep for the night, and they decided on a Pokemon Center. Although, they didn't know where the Pokemon Center was in the town, even Brock with his guidebook. So, Ash and the gang decide that asking the locals for the location was probably the best idea. So, Ash spots a local woman and goes up to ask her. But before she can answer, since Brock had developed a crush on this lady, like he did with every other girl, he immediately interrupts her and goes to flirt with her, stating that he'd already made dinner reservations for the two of them for their first date. This, of course, led Misty to drag Brock off as usual, telling him to shut the fuck up. With Brock's annoyance dealt with, this allows the woman to respond that the nearest Pokemon Center was 10 miles away. Ash and the gang didn't feel like walking 10 miles in the middle of the night, remarking how by the time they arrived, it would likely be morning by that point anyways, so they decided to not find a place to sleep, and instead just camp out at the local park, being too exhausted to do anything else. Upon arrival, Brock proceeds to fill up a pot with some water, because you don't want to go thirsty in the middle of the night. Those 3 a.m. thirsts are fucking deadly. As Brock was collecting the water from the fountain, though, he then spotted a Nidorina who had come by to drink some water from the same fountain. It must have been struck by the 3 a.m. thirst. Anyways, a girl, likely the Nidorina's trainer, runs after it, indicating that it probably got away without her knowing. The girl was so distressed running after it that she unfortunately tripped, almost falling into the fountain in the process, but thankfully, Brock catches her in a Deus Ex Machina moment, asking her very concerned if she was alright. Surprisingly, Brock's actions actually causes this girl to fall in love with Brock in the same way that Brock always falls in love with girls, much to his shock, as he wasn't used to girls actually liking him. Like, he was genuinely scared and intimidated by how this girl was acting towards him because he never had any actual experience with women. Maybe now he would realize what it was like for the women who he always approached like this, and maybe he would stop because of it. I doubt it, but he was scared. Not noticing Brock's fear because she was so in love, the girl proceeds to tell Brock about herself, wanting to win him over, explaining that her name was Tamasu, which was a combination of the names of Teddiursa, Mareep, and Cubone. Explaining that she was named after a Teddiursa, Mareep, and Cubone because of 3 of her personality traits, being cuteness from a Teddiursa, cuddliness from a Mareep, and loneliness from a Cubone. Trying to win Brock over with these traits, saying that she was cute, cuddly, and lonely, and therefore needed a partner. Tamaki was shouting so excitedly that this caused Ash and Misty to wake up as they came out of their tent in the park and saw what was going down. Misty was immensely shocked when she heard Brock introduce himself, stating his name, and the girl didn't react by immediately running away, but instead said how much she loved Brock and his name. Although, even though she admitted that she loved Brock's name, she still wanted to give him a new nickname so that he would have a name that was based on Pokemon that represented his personality, just like her, so they had yet another thing in common. So, she proceeded to give him a new nickname of Exegbricloy, a combination of Execute, Abra, and Cloyster, 3 Pokemon that she thought represented his personality. Misty thinks that Brock should be all over the attention that he was getting from this girl, but noticed how scared and intimidated Brock was, questioning why this was. Anyways, Tamaku then informed Brock that although she wanted to change his first name, she would gladly take Brock's last name when they got married. Yes, that's right, she was already planning on getting married to Brock, man. And she was already obsessed with the idea too, like she was going into fantasies about it at this point, just like Brock would. I don't know why Brock was so intimidated, man. It seemed as though they were like identical to each other, that they both had this obsession with love. Anyways, Ash was obviously very surprised, just like Misty, at how much this girl actually liked Brock. Especially surprised at the fact that Tamaku was already considering getting married despite being so young, and to Brock of all people, with Misty responding that there was nothing wrong with getting married young, stating her want to marry Ash. That's right, Misty liked Ash this whole time. There's a moment for the Misty and Ash shippers right there. Ash was so focused on Brock though that he didn't even hear what Misty said, so he simply just nods, unknowingly agreeing to getting married to Misty. When he eventually realizes what Misty actually said, he instantly gasps in shock and denies that he just nodded, since he obviously didn't want to get married to Misty. Or maybe he was just in denial, who knows. As Tamaki was still fantasizing, a man then suddenly shows up at the park, and Tamasu introduces Brock to him as her father. Tamasu's father scolds his daughter for running off and demands her to come back home, leading Tamasu to reply that she would only come home if Brock could come with her, introducing him to him. Tamasu's father obviously wants his daughter to come back, so he agrees, allowing Brock, along with Misty and Ash, to come over to his house. Misty and Ash thank him, glad that they actually had a place to stay for the night after all, while Brock, on the other hand, tried to back away, still scared of Tamasu's affection. However, Tamasu wouldn't let him get away, and literally dragged him to her house. Upon arrival, Tamasu's father shows Ash and the gang around the entrance, but explains that he was a Pokemon professor, and therefore had some busy research to attend to, so he couldn't stay around for long. So he instructs his daughter to finish the rest of the tour, and runs off to go do some research. Tamasu obliges, excited to show Brock all of the Pokemon that her father researched. So she gives them a quick tour around the house, and then takes them out to the backyard, where a whole bunch of Pokemon were, including her Nidorina and Nidorino. She hypes them up a little bit, and then talks about several of the other Pokemon that her father researched, such as Kingler, Cubone, Sentret, Azumarill, Wooper, Venonat, Raticate, and Rattata, as well as a Shelter. After this, Tamasu decides to make dinner for Ash and the gang, particularly wanting to please Brock with her cooking. Thankfully for her, Brock admits that it was okay, which was good enough for her, who stated that she could make this dinner every night if Brock desired. After dinner, Tamasu then instructs Ash and the gang to go out to the balcony for some tea, and she eventually arrives with the tea, and questions Brock how many sugar cubes he wanted. Brock was still in immense shock at the fact that a girl liked him, and he was still immensely intimidated, as well as somewhat annoyed by her advances. So, he panicked, not knowing what to say, and said 47 cubes, but quickly changed his mind to 45, and he began mumbling several other numbers after, not sure what to say. Misty notices how uncomfortable Brock was, and asks him how it feels to be the one in the uncomfortable position for once, telling him that's how he made all the girls from before feel. Brock didn't respond at all, still completely shocked by everything, unable to do anything at this point. Despite constantly being annoyed by Brock's flirting, that didn't mean that Misty didn't want Brock to find somebody, especially since it meant that if he did, then he would likely stop flirting with other women. So, she told Brock to get his act together so that he wouldn't fuck this up with this girl. However, Brock still says nothing in response, even when Tommaso mentions her perfect wedding with Brock, where she would be in a beautiful wedding dress, Brock would be in a handsome suit, and then they'd cut a huge cake. Pretty basic wedding, but hey, it was her dream wedding. Anyways, to help Brock out so that he didn't fuck up with this girl, Misty tries to make sure that Tommaso remains impressed with him by stating that Brock could do most chores all on his own, even stuff that a woman typically did, such as cleaning and cooking. Much to Misty's delight, this makes Tommaso like Brock even more, while this just ends up making Brock even more unable to do anything due to his uncomfortableness. This leads Misty to go as far as to pull Brock aside for a private chat and ask him what the fuck was up with him and why he couldn't respond to anything Tommaso said, leading Brock to clarify that he had never had an actual relationship before, so he had no clue how to respond to girls actually liking him. Misty simply replies that Brock simply just needed to say fucking anything and he would be doing better than he was now, stating that if he actually managed to do this, then he may have a chance with Tommaso, and therefore he would never have to flirt with any other girls again, since he would actually have a permanent girlfriend. Brock rebuttals that he didn't want to marry someone that he didn't like, such as Tommaso, leading Misty to remind him that every single girl, fucking hundreds, that he has liked throughout all their travels hasn't liked him back. So, he should settle for a girl who actually did like him, stating that it was better to be with someone who actually liked you than someone who didn't, and telling Brock that he should just try and force himself to like Tommaso. I don't know about that, Misty, but I get it. You just want Brock to actually find happiness. Brock questions why Misty was giving him dating advice, leading Misty to counter that Brock could literally get dating advice from literally anyone, and they would be more qualified than him. Misty then warns Brock that this may be the only girl in the entire world that actually ends up liking him, stating that if he didn't go for her, then he may never have a chance at finding a girl ever again. This frightens Brock, so he agrees with Misty that he would at least try and develop feelings for Tommaso. Brock decides to sleep on this whole situation, as Ash and the gang go to bed at Tommaso's house for the night, and the next morning, Tommaso's father was more free today, so he decided to give Ash and the gang a tour of his lab area, and explained that he had plans to expand his backyard garden as well, so that it could fit more Pokemon, specifically 100 Pokemon, so he would have more to research. Tommaso then jumps in and states that if her father was going to have 100 Pokemon to take care of, then he could use an assistant, and suggests that Brock be that assistant, so that Brock could stay with her forever. She proceeds to imagine Brock in a very handsome, fancy lab coat, as her father agrees, stating he would need an assistant. Unfortunately, Brock was still immensely uncomfortable, so he didn't respond whatsoever. This led Misty to pull Brock aside once again, where Brock admitted that he really didn't want to be Tommaso's father's assistant if it meant that he had to be around Tommaso, stating that he tried to like Tommaso, but he just couldn't, and he didn't want to go into a relationship where he didn't like the girl. Misty rebutted that Brock was just overthinking shit, and he was being too picky, and should just settle for Tommaso already, reminding him that he wouldn't be able to find anyone else. Brock was about to counter, but just as he did so, Tommaso then appeared behind Brock and Misty, questioning what the fuck they were talking about, before showing Brock her Nidorino that she raised, yet again, trying to impress him. And she then states her belief that she wanted Brock to raise a Nidorino, stating that the Nidorino would be the perfect partner to her Nidorina, since they were the male and female counterparts of each other, just like how her and Brock were the perfect partners for each other, and she added that her and Brock, along with the Nidorino and Nidorino, could go on double dates with each other. Brock tries to shut this down by letting her know that he didn't have a Nidorino, only for Tommaso to pull one out from behind her back, stating that she had caught one for Brock, as a token of her affection. Before Brock could refuse the Nidorino instantly jumped out of Tommaso's hands and ran up to her Nidorina, and the two Pokemon began cuddling, which gave Tommaso the idea to cuddle up to Brock as well, as she talked about the Nidorina and Nidorino's relationship, comparing it to her and Brock's potential relationship. Probably to Brock's delight, to be honest, that's when Team Rocket shows up and captures Nidorina, Nidorino, Pikachu, and several of Tommaso's father's research Pokemon in nets from their Meowth balloon. Yes, that's right, Team Rocket had showed up to steal some Pokemon, and we hadn't even heard from them earlier in the episode. Like usually, we see them spying first or something, but not this time. They just made their usual entrance. Team Rocket then did their motto, doing their motto in extremely weird costumes that resembled Mongolian costumes. Misty questioned what the reasoning for these strange-ass costumes were, with Jessie simply rebutting that they felt like it, so that they could make a more interesting entrance, with Meowth clarifying that they worked at a Mongolian barbecue to earn these costumes. Jessie didn't want to reveal to Ash and the gang that they were desperate for food, so that's why they went to a barbecue, so she simply told Meowth to quit talking, as she sent out her Arbok to counter Ash's Totodile, who he had sent out to try and free the Pokemon. It's barely even a battle between Arbok and Totodile, as Totodile is able to knock Arbok out with one single water gun, leading James to send out his Weezing to use Smokescreen so that they could try and escape. Sure enough, this smokescreen blinds Ash and gang, so they can't see anything, so it makes their attempt to try and find the net that held Pikachu, the Nidorino, and Nidorina completely impossible, since they can't see jack shit. This allows Team Rocket to pull in the net into their Meowth balloon, but as they're doing so, Tamaku, who had been separated from Brock in the smoke, was trying to look for him for comfort as she was scared due to the situation going on. While Tamaku was looking for Brock, she accidentally tripped over the rope that was connecting the net and the Meowth balloon, which caused her to get caught in the rope and also unknowingly detach the net from the rope in the process. This meant that as Team Rocket was flying away, they unknowingly dragged Tamaku with them instead of the net full of Pokemon, as the net full of Pokemon landed on the ground. Misty then has her Poliwhirl come out and use a combination of Bubble and Ice Beam to blow away the smoke so Ash and the gang can see again, and they see that Team Rocket was gone, and so was Tamaku, but their Pokemon were safe and sound. Meanwhile, Team Rocket had since landed their Meowth balloon in the forest, and were pulling up their ropes, expecting one of them to have the Pokemon on the other side. However, Jessie's rope was cut when she pulled it up, indicating that Tamaku had cut it, when the Pokemon were freed. And James then pulls up his rope and sees Tamaku holding onto it. James was obviously immensely shocked at this, as he had thought that him and Jessie had just simply failed to pull up the net, because they usually seem to fail. James wasn't the only one in shock, though, as Tamaku was obviously in shock to see James, so as a result, she lost her balance and accidentally let go of the rope as James was pulling it up, but thankfully, James was able to grab her hand before she fell and pull her up. As a result, Tamaku falls in love with James, just like she did for Brock, amazed by how James had just saved her. She quickly introduces herself to James, explaining the origin of her name yet again, as she eagerly asks for James's name, wanting to give him a nickname as well. When James obliges, she gives James the nickname Madavusu as a combination of the Pokemon Magikarp, Dugong, Vulpix, and Sudowoodo, thinking that would capture his personality. However, James was pissed off when he heard about Magikarp. Tamaku proceeds to simp for James, leading Jessie and Meowth to remark that James finally got a girlfriend, which they were very shocked by, because, James was James, man. Just like Brock, James also seemed initially annoyed by Tamaku's advances, but his annoyance turns to pure, utter fear as Tamaku suggests that James be her fiancé. Damn, she switched up on Brock quick, huh? But anyways, upon hearing the word fiancé, James immediately runs away, climbing up a tree in fear, as he gets a flashback to his ex-girlfriend, Jezebel, that his parents tried to force him to marry. Remember that episode? Yeah, he essentially had PTSD from the bitch that was Jezebel, so he didn't want to get married in any way, shape, or form. Unfortunately for him, Tamaku had other plans, as she described her dream wedding to James, which was the exact same as her one with Brock, but just with James in replacement. This of course made James even more frightened, and Jessie and Meowth were getting annoyed by seeing this, so they suggested that they simply just leave Tamaku behind and return to their Meowth balloon. However, Jessie immediately retracts this suggestion, as she remembers that Tamaku was the daughter of a Pokemon professor. They knew this, since that was the entire reason why they ambushed her dad's house in the first place, was because they knew he was a professor, and they wanted to steal several of his mons. Anyways, Jessie realized that if James was willing to get close to Tamaku, then that would mean that Tamaku would take James to her house, allowing Team Rocket another chance to steal all of the lab Pokemon. She also thought that James could even own them legally if he went through with marrying Tamaku. Jessie's thoughts were then interrupted by James's yelling, who was trying to tell Tamaku that he wouldn't join her because he was part of Team Rocket. But Tamaku just assumed that this was a little club that he was a part of, and simply said that he could stay with the club and be her husband at the same time. James tried to escape Tamaku by climbing up further into the tree. However, Jessie commanded James to get the fuck down and come talk to her. James was too scared though, so Jessie had to forcibly get him down from the tree by hitting him with rocks, and once he was down, she whispered into his ear, explaining her plan for James to get close to Tamaku and then steal the Pokemon. James didn't want to agree, but he was too enticed by the prospect of stealing Pokemon. Meanwhile, Tamaku's dad was obviously concerned for Tamaku's safety, so he decided to get together a search party in order to look for his missing daughter, consisting of Ash, Misty, and Brock obviously, but also 6 townsfolk. Everyone first headed into the forest to look, and Ash sent out his Noctowl to help as well by doing an aerial search. Sure enough, Noctowl proved extremely useful, as it was quickly able to locate Team Rocket's Meowth balloon and report back to Ash and the gang. Unbeknownst to Noctowl though, the Meowth balloon was empty, as Team Rocket had left with Tamaku to Tamaku's father's house, disguised, as they showed up at the door and were immediately greeted by Tamaku's father, who had stayed behind while everyone else went on the search party in case Tamaku showed up at the house, and sure enough, Tamaku did with the disguised Team Rocket. Tamaku's father was extremely grateful, thanking them for bringing back Tamaku, but questioning where they found her, with Jessie lying that they had found her kidnapped by some terrorists known as Team Rocket, obviously not revealing themselves to be these terrorists, and they had rescued her from these terrorists. With James fighting the terrorists off all by himself as a way to apparently prove his love for Tamaku. Tamaku's father then sees that Tamaku was apparently head over heels over James and told her that he understood why, since James had saved her, and gives James his permission to become her new fiancé. Tamaku's father wasn't entirely happy though, as he noticed that Jessie and James had just had a Meowth right next to them, and questioned why he was out of his Pokeball, seemingly being forced to wear a disguise, leading Jessie to come up with another lie that they had found the Meowth on the street, lonely and wearing this outfit, so they decided to adopt him, but they let him keep on the suit, as it was his only reminder of his past life. Tamaku's father was immensely touched by this, believing Team Rocket to just be saints, as they had saved both the Meowth and his daughter, so he willingly lets them into his house. This was just what Team Rocket wanted, as now they could implement their plan. Essentially, they had decided to give Tamaku back to her father in order to earn his trust, and then they would be let inside the house where they would be able to find all of the Pokeballs that contained his research Pokemon. So, as Tamaku's father dragged James off to have a welcome dinner for his daughter's new fiancé, Jessie and Meowth took the opportunity to look around Tamaku's father's house for not only his research Pokemon, but also the Nidorino and Nidorina that they tried to capture earlier. They wanted Pikachu too, but they figured that Ash likely wasn't at the house anymore, so they knew they couldn't get him. Even though they couldn't find the Nidorino or Nidorina, they did find Tamaku's father's lab, which contained a shelf with tens and tens of Pokeballs, and Jessie proceeded to grab all of them and throw them in a bag. However, when Jessie and Meowth tried to make their escape from the lab, they were found by Tamaku's father, who had come to look for them to tell them that Tamaku's dinner was ready, and he wanted them to enjoy the meal as well, being James's friends. Jessie and Meowth, of course, couldn't turn down a free meal due to how starving they were at all times, so Jessie simply took the bag of Pokeballs with her as she went to the dining room with Meowth, where James and Tamaku were already sitting. Tamaku was flirting with James just as much as she did with Brock, and James was having the same reaction, not being able to say anything, not having the heart to tell Tamaku that he wasn't interested, and he knew that he couldn't, because then Tamaku's father would know that he wasn't actually her fiancé. James, thinking that Jessie was somewhat of an expert on love, tried to get her advice on what he should do in the situation, but Jessie was too busy chowing down. He then tried to suggest to her that they find a way to get the fuck out of this place, as he was super uncomfortable, but Jessie was still too busy chowing down, much to his dismay. Meanwhile, back in the forest, Noctowl had led Ash and the gang to the Meowth balloon, leading Ash to order Noctowl to pop a hole into it, but when he did, and sent it down, he of course realized that Team Rocket was not inside the Meowth balloon. They had left it behind as a decoy, leaving cardboard cutouts of themselves in their place. Damn, that was actually kind of smart of Team Rocket for once. But anyways, one of the townsfolk had since returned to Tamaku's father to give him an update on Noctowl finding the Meowth balloon. And when he returned to Ash and the gang and all the other townsfolk, he informed them that Tamaku's father had said that Tamaku had returned to his house. So now the search party was officially over, as Tamaku was back. Yay, right? Well, not really, because Ash and the gang realized that if Team Rocket had purposely set up a decoy, then they must have done something with Tamaku. So they realized that they must have purposely took Tamaku back to Tamaku's father's house. So they rushed back with the rest of the townsfolk to find out what truly happened. When they arrived back at Tamaku's house, they spot Tamaku and her father in the kitchen having dinner with the disguised Jessie and James. And Meowth. Ash and Misty immediately recognize Team Rocket in their disguises, but before they can say anything, Tamaku introduces Jessie and James as her new fiancé and his maiden, as Jessie had since described herself as James's maiden. Brock is immensely shocked at this, believing that Tamaku really did like him that much that she would never leave him for anyone else. Brock then became heartbroken and jealous of James, leading Misty to question why, believing that he still didn't have any feelings for Tamaku anyways, leading Brock to reveal that seeing Tamaku with someone else had made feelings appear. Well, isn't that convenient, huh, Brock? Anyways, Brock then added that if Tamaku was gonna fall for James, then he knew that he was meant to be her true match, because that way he could save her from James. Misty then remembers that, oh yeah, these people are fucking Team Rocket, they should probably do something to stop them, and she and Ash try to explain to Tamaku and her father that these guys were actually Team Rocket, leading Jessie, still in her disguise obviously, to rebuttal that no, they were just random locals from the area. Misty didn't let Jessie get away with this lie though, as she then literally ripped off her disguise, being some simple glasses, revealing Team Rocket. Jessie gets startled, and as a result, she kicks over the bag of Pokeballs that she had since placed by her feet when she sat down to eat, placing them under the table so that Tamaku's father didn't notice them. However, when she kicked over the bag, this caused all of the Pokeballs to fall out, revealing that Team Rocket tried to steal them. Team Rocket reluctantly leave all the Pokeballs behind, as they had no way to reclaim them all in time, as Ash and the gang were trailing them from behind, not letting them escape, as Ash sent out his Chikorita. As Ash and the gang chased Team Rocket outside. As Team Rocket kept running, Jessie sent out her Arbok yet again to battle against Chikorita, but Chikorita was able to take out Arbok with a single tackle attack. This led James to send out his Weezing to use Smokescreen, so Team Rocket could use the smoke to escape, just like they did the first time. But Misty saw this coming, so she sent out her Poliwhirl to use Bubble and Ice Beam yet again in a combination, which was able to counteract the smoke before it took effect. Chikorita then joins in to attack Weezing, using a Razor Leaf on it, but this wasn't enough to take out Weezing, so James prepared to have Weezing use an attack of its own. Tamaku sent out her Nidorina and actually had it attack Poliwhirl with a tackle, trying to protect James and his Weezing due to, falling in love with him and all. This pisses off Misty, who then tries to have her Poliwhirl use Water Gun, not on Tamaku and her Nidorina, but once again on James's Weezing, but Weezing manages to dodge, meaning that the Water Gun was instead heading straight for James, not his Weezing. This in turn meant that Tamaku tried to protect James once again by pushing him out of the way and taking the Water Gun full blast to herself, causing her to fall down to the ground, leading Brock to run up to her and check if she was okay, because now he wanted to impress her. Fucking too late, Brock. Anyways, while Brock was checking on Tamaku, Ash and Misty were still battling against Weezing, as well as Arbok, who had recovered, and Chikorita managed to get the upper hand against them by using a Vine Whip to knock Arbok and Weezing into each other, and then Chikorita grabs both of them and tosses them into Jessie and James, knocking all four of them down, leaving them susceptible to one final attack from both Pikachu and Poliwhirl, as Pikachu uses Thunderbolt and Poliwhirl uses Water Gun, sending Team Rocket blasting off. With Team Rocket gone, Brock continued to try and comfort Tamaku, only to notice that Tamaku had passed out from the hit. So Brock rushed Tamaku over to her dad, and her dad proceeded to put her inside her bed in her room and began to treat her. With the help of a doctor that he had just called like 5 seconds ago, but he showed up because Tamaku's father was so goddamn rich. As Ash and the gang watched with Tamaku's father as Tamaku was being treated, Tamaku's father revealed that Tamaku had been obsessed with the idea of love and marriage after attending her cousin's wedding. That was literally all that she could think about after that. In hopes to wake Tamasu up, Brock officially declares his love for Tamasu, trying to explain to her that that he was just shy at first and was too nervous to do anything. Brock hoped that him declaring his love for her would cause her to wake up, and it actually did. However, as soon as she woke up, the first thing that she spotted was the doctor treating her, and upon noticing how kind the doctor was, she immediately fell in love with him, even more so than she had with Brock or James, and instantly pictured herself getting married to him, picturing her dream wedding with him as well, with her in a dress, him in a suit, and them getting ready to cut the cake. Unlike Brock and James, the doctor was a Chad, as he wasn't nervous around Tamaku at all, and instantly had reciprocated feelings towards her, asking her to marry him. As Tamaku and the doctor instantly begin their wedding plans, Brock is now crushed, although Misty remarks that Brock should be happy for Tamaku for finding someone who loved her right away, and teases him that a real doctor could not compare to a Pokemon breeder. A real doctor was way better. This just crushes Brock even more, as him, Ash, and Misty all walk out of Tamaku's house to continue on their journey. Along their way, Brock is still crying in sadness, leading Misty and Ash to comfort him by stating that there was plenty of fish in the sea, and Brock would meet the love of his life someday, despite Misty saying earlier that Brock probably wouldn't, because Misty didn't want to hear Brock crying anymore. Despite Misty's forced assurance, Brock took all of this to heart and declared that he would find the love of his life somewhere, confident, and the episode then ends as he spots a town in the distance and comes to the conclusion that his love of his life may be at that town, as there was likely plenty of beautiful girls in that town. So, in a hurry, he speeds ahead, now determined to find a girl once again, with Ash and Misty tirelessly following.